Having recently been approached by an athlete wanting to work towards a 2:30 marathon by the age of 35, which would represent an elite level of performance within the Masters age group, I thought I would put together some thoughts as to how I would coach someone through the process. Now, success leaves clues, so if we can have a good idea as to what elite level marathon training looks like, then that's helpful. I have spent a significant period of time in the past training with elite Kenyan runners in Iten, Kenya. So I actually have first-hand experience of the training programs of some of the world's best marathon runners. Here's what a fairly typical week would look like.
About this is that if you are not already at an elite level, then this is not a suitable training program for you. However, if you have aspirations of reaching an elite or even somewhat close to elite standard, then you probably do want to be gradually working towards a program that, at least to a degree, resembles what we can see here. It's not going to be a carbon copy of this. This isn't necessarily the perfect plan. It's certainly not the most scientific plan. Coaches such as Renato Canova have taken a much more scientific approach with select Kenyan athletes and done so with devastating effect. Indeed, there is much we can learn from Canova's training principles. One of Canova's big ideas is that your specific training matters the most. All other training exists simply to support your specific training. Central to this idea is his phrase, the volume of the intensity. So instead of being solely concerned with total running mileage, there is a greater investment into the amount of mileage performed at close to marathon pace. Now that is not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because remember, other training does exist. And it exists to support your specific training. So actually, by accumulating higher levels of mileage over time at slower, easier paces, that is actually going to support your ability to tolerate more miles at marathon pace further down the line. And in fact, if we go back to the typical Kenyan training week, if you were to tot up all that mileage, that is easily over 100 miles a week. And realistically, if you are striving for elite performance, then that is probably one of your first training milestones to at least get pretty close to 100 miles per week. Now, you don't want to rush this and get injured. It might take you several years to get there. We want to consider how we are going to achieve this as well as the time frame. Okay, so one key factor that will likely help is slowing down the majority of your mileage. Because simply put, slower mileage represents less stress on your body than faster mileage. Just to contextualize, if you were running 100 miles per week, all at 6 minute per mile pace, you would be more likely to become injured compared to if you were running 100 miles a week, all at 7 minute mile pace. And just to provide some more specific guidelines here, I would say a good rule of thumb is to be doing most of your easy running at about 2 minutes per mile slower than your marathon race pace. So if you're a world-class marathon runner operating at just under 5 minute mile pace, that means easy runs are at about 7 minute per mile pace. But guess what? In Britain, most of your average club runners probably do their steady or easy runs at close to 7 minute mile pace. So you're going to want to slow down. And unless you do slow down, you are probably unlikely to successfully build up the mileage to where it needs to be. Of course, not all of your mileage is going to be done slowly. Let's go back to that traditional Kenyan training week. Let's take a look at the long run on the Saturday. Kenyans traditionally do their long run on a Saturday. In Britain, we traditionally do the long run on a Sunday. That's a small, inconsequential difference. It doesn't really matter. However, there is another difference there which is of huge importance, and that is the intensity of the long run. You can see it says 35 kilometers hard there. Now, bear in mind, this run will take place on dirt trails and at altitude, so it's unlikely to be quite at marathon pace, but it won't be far off, and the effort level will be very much equating to that of marathon pace. Whereas in Britain, we have the tradition of the long, easy Sunday run. This is a missed opportunity. Training for the marathon does not get much more specific than 18 to 20 miles of continuous running at very close to target race pace.
So the chances are, if you are an ambitious marathon runner watching this video, you pretty much need to flip things around. You need to be running your long runs much harder, but you need to be running the majority of the rest of your mileage much easier. This will need to be a gradual process, as we've already alluded to. You'll need to build up your easy mileage first before you are able to tolerate higher volumes of work at marathon race pace. In turn, having a well-planned strength and conditioning plan running alongside your running program will increase robustness, and it will facilitate your journey towards hitting your target mileage. Now, we won't go into the details on strength and conditioning because we've still only just touched the surface on the running training itself. There is still so much more to consider. What about training paces faster than marathon pace? Do they have a role to play? And if so, where do they fit into the program? What about recovery methods? What about fueling for specific sessions and races? What about subtle variations in training from week to week and month to month, and how we accommodate training based on how you're feeling, whether niggles, injuries, all these kind of adjustments that need to be made on an ongoing basis. Still so much more to consider, but if you are watching this and you're an ambitious marathon runner and you would like me to coach you to becoming closer to that elite standard, then I am now taking on coaching clients. So if you head to my website, foxwoodpersonaltraining.co.uk, you can send me a message through the website and we can chat.